And by popular demand, you wanted information about financing startups. So what you're going to hear today is vitally important for your future. It's all about business. All right. And to moderate this panel is our dear Enriquez with lots of business experience, Susan Coe.
My name is Susan Coe. When I was in the program, my name was Susan Lee. I went to RSI in 1991. Good to see all of you. See lots of old friends in the audience. For many of you, I know that some of you have already launched companies, others are interested in doing so, and hopefully this session will help you think about what you need to think about to do that. We have assembled a very diverse group of backgrounds here to talk about startups. We've got entrepreneurs, investors, people who've raised money at all levels and in terms of their career. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to one Enriquez, who is Managing Director of Excel Venture Management and also a trustee.
So what I really want you to think about is what are the big trend lines that on the one hand drive science and on the other hand drive this bridge between science and jobs, and what is it that drives the rise and fall of nations and wealth creation. And I'd like to argue, just for simplicity's sake, that what does that is code. Because we share a lot of code with animals, but there's no animal on this planet that transmits knowledge consistently to their great-grandchildren besides humans. And it's that ability to code that has driven most wealth the last 30 years. This is the rise of Singapore, the rise of Silicon Valley, the rise of Korea, Taiwan, you name it. It really matters if you understand this stuff in time, and of course it becomes more and more powerful. This was 5 megabytes in 1956. If you wanted to take a second picture with your cell phone, it only cost you $1 million. There wasn't a lot of digital photography, right? So this is what a teraflop looked like, and this is the most powerful computer in the world for about 4 years, which is a pretty extraordinary record. Of course, that computer now fits into the side of your little laptop. And as these systems move forward, as these systems become more powerful, they give rise to very, very large businesses. Today is that now we are in a new coding system, or we're moving towards a new coding system, which is the ability to read, write life. And that ability to read and write life code is going to be the greatest single driver of the global economy over the next 30 to 40 years. But what I want you to understand as we head into this business panel is all this abstract, interesting stuff is beginning to have a really large impact. Because how and where you make stuff is beginning to shift. And that is going to be an order of magnitude change, much as you saw with the Industrial Revolution, the metals revolution, the digital revolution, but now it's going to be driven by life sciences. One of the things we built is a cell that can be programmed. So you can take the DNA out of the cell, insert new DNA, and that cell became a completely different species. That means cells become hardware. These are things that are going to determine which countries are rich, which countries are poor, who has jobs, and what happens to entire economies. That's why the stuff that you're doing with education and science really does matter. Thank you.
Next, we have Hillel Bachach, who's the managing partner of 2020 Healthcare Partners.
I came to the U.S. from Israel in 1974 to get my MBA at the Midwestern school called Kellogg. By that time, it was not even called that. Graduated in 76, and since 76 started to work at the area of what is now called life science. It was medical devices called at that time. Was looked very poorly upon because there was not much innovation, but that's where I started in 1976. And since then, with some kind of urge inside, maybe not from the scientific side, but more from the personal and intellectual side, started a few companies that were diverse in their field of medicine, but did very well for myself. I worked for some large companies, which still today employ a lot of people, but saw my place in those small companies that I started later. Some of the companies I IPO'd, some of them I sold to private equity, some of them I sold to strategic partners, meaning to larger companies. Most of them did well, not all of them did well. And that is really one of the keys that maybe we'll talk about later, that one of the keys to success is in failing a little bit at times, becoming a little humble. Being humble is one of the keys to looking forward and being successful in the future. In 2005, I started a company, investment company, taking the experience that I had in the last 30 or so years, working with seeding companies, working in the area of imaging, diagnostic imaging mainly, cardiology, and predictive medicine, with the idea of helping people like you, maybe a little bit older in age, but not maybe in maturity, and trying to get this world a better world. Thank you very much.
Our next panelist has experience both on the investing as well as the operating side. He's Paul Davis, founder and CEO of Intelligent Integration Systems.
I spend my career mostly serving really smart people. And one of my concerns is that people who have enormous talent and can make just tremendous contributions to society, technology development, whatever, right now have a real challenge in finding circumstances where they're protected and nurtured so that they can focus their talents on what they're really good at. My career really in this niche started in the early 1990s when I was matched up as the business guy with a great Western figure, a guy named Bill Arinsky, who was a pioneer in taking robots and actually using them for useful purposes. And that theme of problem solving has gone through sort of the family of companies, one that's been connected to the next to the next. My current partners are unusual guys. Rich Zimmerman lives still near the facility in Arizona where we started with Bill and built robotic assembly systems. The only other person I know who has those same qualities is my other partner, who's a guy named Marshall Peterson. And I know Marshall through Juan. Marshall's a guy who is very determined and very talented, likes to focus on his problems. He's also the guy who is believed to be the Vietnam veteran surviving with the most Purple Hearts. He's a really, really hard-nosed guy. But the great problem he solved quickly was figuring out how to build the IT infrastructure and sequencing center for Craig when Craig tried to take on that genome challenge. So our company basically solves problems in data warehousing where we are integrators. We work with things that already exist, big data warehouse engines, and try to, solve the problem. So we're integrators. That means our problems tend to be engineering-type problems, tight problems. But again, my job is to take care of the people who need to solve the problems, and I think, again, as we talk about this, that's a challenge in today's venture environment. Robin Chase and her husband, Roy Russell, founded Zipcar. I had the privilege, as it turns out, to be, in our small seed fund, the third investor. It happened shortly, in a short period of time, in the kitchen of Zipcar. And actually, one of the hidden stories, there was a friend of theirs who had invested, but one of the hidden stories is that the real first investor was Juan. And Juan wrote the check at a moment of crisis when the company either would or would not have happened. And he wrote that check without any paper, no contract. It was a handshake, kind of a hidden story. And it was about trust and relationships, and his recognition, his belief in Robin, and of course always in parentheses, Roy Russell, her husband, is there's a responsibility for those of us who work with really, really talented people who create great value to figure out how to help you succeed and how to help you focus. And anyway, that's been sort of the focus of my career. Thanks.
Tom Layton has been a trustee and friend of the Center for many, many years, and you may know him a little better as one of the co-founders of Akamai.
My background is in mathematics and theoretical computer science. Theoretical computer science is a field where you work on algorithms and you do it from a mathematical perspective. After college and graduate school, I joined the faculty in mathematics at MIT. I guess I'm here today in part because in the late 90s, one of the projects we were working on was trying to use mathematics to make the internet infrastructure, the web, work better. One of the things we started thinking about was that the idea that everybody on the web is going to come and grab information from a single centralized web server wasn't going to work very well and wasn't going to scale. The web was a great invention, but its design had limitations. And so we devised algorithms and approaches to try to change the way the web worked. The idea being that we would take computer servers and spread them all around the world in thousands of locations, and that end users of the web would get what they wanted from a server that's local to them, not have to go across to, Atlanta for CNN or, the Bay Area for eBay, for example. And the challenge we faced was, well, how do you take this technology you wrote a paper about and get it implemented? And, we tried hard to get people interested. They weren't. We tried to license the technology. Nobody was interested. And ultimately, we faced the decision, well, we could just leave it as a paper, or if you really believe in it, form a company. And the challenge there, forming a company, is you got to figure out how to make money, which is different than writing a paper or having a good idea. And ultimately, we figured that out, and we created Akamai in 1998. And today, it's working. Thanks.
Which is, your network is really everywhere. And I actually think that in this room, there are Rickoids who have started companies. Be bold. Take a risk.